Hello and welcome for the lecture 2 on the series on respiratory physiology. So, I will be discussing the chapter 2, which is the basic understanding for the next chapters to know how the gas exchange occurs. So, in this chapter, we are discussing about the concepts of the pressure and the physics of gases. So we do come across the terminology called as partial pressure. So the partial pressure is the pressure that is exerted by a given gas in a mixture of gases. So if you take a mixture of gases, it can be represented by different colors. So the sum of all the partial pressures or the total pressure here is exerted by the sum of all partial pressure of each gas. So what do you mean by the partial pressure? It is the pressure that is given by a single gas or given by a gas in a mixture of gases. So you have the partial pressure of this, partial pressure of this, partial pressure of this. Put together we call it as total pressure. So the pressure of the individual gas molecule in a mixture of gases is called partial pressure. So partial pressure is designated as P. For example, partial pressure of PO2 refers to partial pressure of oxygen, PCO2 partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Sometimes it can also be designated as the area which we are referring to. For example, PO2A refers to the arterial partial pressure of oxygen. PO2V, venous. What is the partial pressure of the oxygen in the venous side? PO2 capital A. What is the partial pressure of the oxygen in the alveoli? And so on. So how do you get partial pressure? It is found by multiplying the concentration of a gas into the total pressure. For example, oxygen content in a dry air is about 20.94% or approximately 21%. The total pressure at sea level is about 760 mmHg, millimeters of mercury. Therefore, partial pressure of oxygen is equal to 20.94 by 100 into 760. That is approximately 159 mmHg. In the similar fashion, partial pressure of carbon dioxide is equal to, the concentration is 0.03 by 100 into 760. You do get around 0.23 mmHg. In the similar fashion for nitrogen, it is highest amount, so it is 79%. So 79 by 100 into 760, you do get around 600 mmHg. In the similar fashion, we also have partial pressure of water. Even though water exists in a liquid phase, the water has also the gas phase, which is called vapor. The gaseous phase of water is called vapor. So the partial pressure of water is 47 mmHg at 37 degrees Celsius. The most important point to be remembered is that any gas for that matter exhibit the net movement by simple diffusion. The gas moves by simple diffusion in response to pressure difference. So what do you mean by it? The gas always moves from higher pressure to lower pressure by simple diffusion process. So this chart summarizes the partial pressure of oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, water in different parts of the body. So the pressures are given in mmHg, millimeters of mercury. So if you take oxygen in the alveolar air, or the air that is present in the alveoli, the partial pressure of the oxygen is 109 mmHg. Whereas in the arterial blood, it reduces to 100 mmHg. In the venous blood, it is 40 mmHg approximately, and in the tissue, it is less than 30. So by the previous explanation, it was stated that the gases move through diffusion from high pressure to low pressure. So you can see the pressure goes on decreasing from the alveoli to that of the tissue. So the movement of the oxygen will be from alveolar air into the arterial blood, then into the tissues. So if you see the carbon dioxide, in the alveolar air it is 40 mmHg, in the arterial it is 40, and in the venous blood it is 45, and the tissue it is more than 50. So it is just opposite. So the movement is opposite from the tissue to that of the alveolar level. If you see for the nitrogen, it always in the equilibrium of the same partial pressure. That means to say it is not consumed or not produced. It is in the equilibrium state. And also you can see the partial pressure of water remains the same. And most importantly, if you see, the total pressure of the alveoli is in similarity to that of the total pressure of atmospheric air. So that there is an equilibrium that is maintained within the atmosphere and the internal part of the body. But there are few peculiarities which has to be noted down. Is number one, the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolar air is 109, which is much more lesser than that of the atmospheric partial pressure of oxygen, that is at around 159 mmHg. So why it is decreased from 159 to 109 when it enters inside the body? The reason, number one, air is humidified. We have already seen in the first lecture, whenever the air moves, it is humidified and warmed by the turbinate bones. So whenever it is humidified, it dilutes the oxygen content. Number B, there is constant removal of oxygen from the alveoli. So it is constantly removed from the alveoli, it moves inside the capillaries. And there is constant entry of carbon dioxide into the alveoli from the capillaries, therefore again diluting the concentration of oxygen. Therefore the partial pressure decreases. And the second peculiarity that could be seen here is that the partial pressure of the alveolar air and the arterial blood is again decreased. So PaO2 is lesser than PaO2, that is arterial partial pressure is less than that of the alveolar pressure. So why it is seen? It is seen because of the shunt of the blood. That is, not all of the blood goes to the pulmonary capillaries. About 97 to 98% of the blood goes to the pulmonary capillaries, whereas the few blood is shunted upon. It does not enter inside the pulmonary capillaries for oxygenation. It moves in a shunt pathway. So that is the reason there is a decrease in the partial pressure of the oxygen in the arterial blood. And if you see an opposite, the partial pressure of alveolar carbon dioxide is somewhat similar to that of the partial pressure of the arterial carbon dioxide. This is because of the greater diffusion coefficient of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide has got increased diffusion coefficient. So therefore it remains the same. So after knowing the partial pressures, it is important to know few of the physics laws which involves or which correlates the relationship between the volume, temperature and the pressure of the gases, which will determine the flow of the gases. We'll see one by one. The first law which we are seeing is the Boyle's law. Boyle's law gives the relationship between the volume of the gas and the pressure. It states that the volume is inversely proportional to the pressure. That is, whenever there is increased pressure, the volume decreases, or whenever there is an increased volume, the pressure decreases. We will see the application later on. The second law is the Charles law, which gives the relationship between the volume to that of the temperature. It states whenever there is an increased temperature or whenever the temperature increases, the volume also increases. So there is a direct correlation between these two. Third is the Henry's law, which gives the relationship between the volume and the pressure and what is called solubility coefficient. So it states the volume of a gas in any compartment is not only affected by the pressure, it is also affected by how much that gas is soluble in it, mainly in a solution. So in a solution, in a water, what is the solubility which will determine the volume of the gas? For example, the solubility of carbon dioxide is 0.067. That is, it is the most soluble gas, that is around 22 times more than the oxygen. Whereas the oxygen is least soluble, the solubility is 0.003 ml per deciliter of the blood per mmHg. So it is least soluble in the water. That is the reason why in nature we do have hemoglobin molecule. So oxygen is always transported in binding with hemoglobin, because for example hemoglobin, if the concentration of hemoglobin is 15 mg per deciliter or 15 gram per cent, and if the partial pressure of the oxygen in the arterial side is 100 mmHg, then you can see 20 ml of oxygen to be carried. So this carrying of 20 ml is made possible because of this hemoglobin. If there was no hemoglobin, think a situation, if there is no hemoglobin, if this much amount of oxygen had to be carried, by now you know only 0.003 ml will be dissolving in 1 per deciliter of its blood or of the water. So that we would have been so hefty, heavy and larger, and our body would have been filled with all of blood only. So we would have had 400-500 liters of the blood to carry so much ml of oxygen. So to prevent that, we do have the hemoglobin which carries oxygen. So the next law is the Fick's law, which we had already stated, where the rate of diffusion of a gas is directly proportional to the surface area. So if the surface area increases, the diffusion increases. It is directly proportional to the pressure difference. So if the pressure difference is more, the diffusion is more. It is directly proportional to the diffusion coefficient. So if the diffusion coefficient is more, it is also more, but it is indirectly proportional to thickness. So if the thickness is more, then the rate of diffusion decreases, whereas in other things it increases. So V dot gas is given by area, diffusion constant, pressure difference by thickness. So we will see some of the aspects on mechanics of breathing. Breathing refers to the inflow and outflow of air. So this breathing is made possible, as we have already seen, the air flows in and out in response to pressure difference. That is the first point you should remember. So when there is a pressure difference, the air always flows from increased pressure to that of the decreased pressure. So this pressure difference has to be made in our thoracic cavity. So if the inflow, whenever we inspire or inhale, there should be some pressure difference so that the flow of air is seen. So the pressure differences is created by either increasing or decreasing the thoracic volume. Your thoracic volume has to be increased. If the thoracic volume has to be increased, there should be some pressure difference. So this diagrammatic explanation, in this diagram we can see few of important things. So this area is represented to be as visceral pleura. So in the first class we had stated there is a pleura, which is the serous membrane which covers the lungs. This pleura has got two parts. One is the visceral pleura, which is nearly attached to the lungs, and we do have parietal pleura or the costal pleura that is attached to the ribs. So in between the visceral and the parietal pleura, we do have the pleural cavity, which is filled with pleural fluid. It's a transcellular fluid, which is important to prevent the friction. In the similar fashion, we do have the pressure that is outside here. The C refers to the pressure that is outside. What do you call it as? Atmospheric pressure. What is the atmospheric pressure? 760 mmHg. The pressure that is seen inside the lung, so this is the lung, the pressure that is seen inside the lung is called intrapulmonic pressure, intrapulmonary or pulmonic. It is also called intra-alveolar pressure. It is also called intra-alveolar pressure. The pressure that is seen in the thorax, so this is the thorax. The pressure that is seen in the thorax is called intrathoracic pressure, or it is also called intrapleural pressure. Intrapleural pressure. So now, what is the importance of these pressures? So atmospheric pressure is given by the total gases that is present in the atmosphere, that is about 760 mmHg. Intrapulmonic or intraalveolar pressure is seen the air pressure inside the lungs or in the lungs, which is again similar to 760 mmHg. If there is no net diffusion of the gases, the inside of the lungs and the atmosphere remains in the equilibrium, then it should be similar to that of 760 mmHg. Whereas the intrapleural or intrathoracic pressure is the pressure in the thorax or in the pleural plate, in the space or in the pleural space, it is always less than intrapulmonary pressure. It is less than the intrapulmonary or pulmonic pressure. How much it is? It is 756 mmHg, or it can also be represented as -4 mmHg. How did I get this? 760 minus 756, or 756 minus 760, that is equal to 4 mmHg. So why we do have a negative pressure, minus here has to be understood. Number one, lungs are always adhered to the thoracic wall by the liquid layer between the visceral and the parietal pleura. So we have already seen here. And it is purely maintained by the elasticity of the lungs and also the elasticity of the chest wall. So the recoil tendency of the lungs, the elasticity of the lungs and the elasticity of the chest wall always increases the thoracic cavity volume. So as we already seen by the Boyle's law, that whenever there is an increased volume, there should be decreased pressure. So this increased maintenance of thoracic volume in the thoracic cavity is seen by the elastic tendency of the lungs and also the chest wall and also the surface tension that is seen here. Therefore, it is always negative when compared to the intrapulmonary pressures. So what happens? So I have three conditions. One, it is rest during inspiration and during expiration. Inspiration means inhalation or intake of air. Expiration means outflow of the air. So the intra-alveolar or pulmonic pressure at rest is 0 mmHg. Why it is 0 mmHg? Because it is in the equilibrium. It is 760 is equal to 760. So instead of saying 760, we say it is 0 because it is similar. So during inspiration, it goes -1 mmHg, or in other words, 759 mmHg. You can put in any way. So I can put it at 760 mmHg or minus 759 or -1. So what is happening here? So at rest it was 760. During inspiration it becomes 759 or -1 mmHg. Why it is -1? 760, 759 minus 760, so it is minus 1. So what happens? The gas moves from higher to the lower pressure, so it moves from outside of the body to that of the inside. So what happens to the expiration? It is plus 1 mmHg, or we can say 761 mmHg. Therefore, during expiration, the pressure inside is more, therefore the air will move from inside to that of the outside. So if you see the intrapleural pressure, we say normally it is minus 4 in the rest. What should happen in the inspiration? It should be lesser, it should be minus 6 mmHg, and in the expiration it is minus 2 mmHg. So we'll compare what will happen during inspiration and what happens during the expiration, or how the air from the external or outside will move inside the lungs, and how the air from the lungs moves out to the environment. So the inspiration is always initiated by ventral group neurons. They are also called ventral respiratory group neurons. They are found in the medulla oblongata. They will start firing. Firing means they will produce the action potential. This action potential that is generated from medulla reaches most important diaphragm. So diaphragm is considered as the principal inspiratory muscle. So it reaches the diaphragm via phrenic nerve. So phrenic nerve supplies the diaphragm. It reaches the diaphragm. So when it reaches the diaphragm, it contracts. So what happens if the diaphragm contracts? So it is like this. So here are the lungs. So here is the diaphragm. So whenever it contracts, it pulls down the thoracic cavity. So it is increasing the volume in this direction. Not only this, the second thing that happens is there is contraction of external intercostal muscle. Intercostal muscles are the muscles that are found in the intercostal spaces that are in between the ribs. So we do have external and internal. External intercostals process. So whenever the external intercostals are contracted, they pull the ribs out. So they pull the ribs out. So what happens when they pull the ribs out? Again the volume inside increases. And they also push the sternum cranially. So the sternum that is present here is pushed upwards. The upward pushing of the sternum, sideward pulling of the ribs, and also downward pulling of the diaphragm. All these, what will do? It will increase the volume of thoracic cavity. So what happens when there is increased volume? According to the Boyle's law, pressure decreases. So what happens when the pressure decreases? The air flows from where to where? From outside, that is the environment, to that of the inside. So what are the pressure changes that could be seen? The intra-alveolar pressure or the pulmonic pressure goes minus 1 mmHg. The intrathoracic pressure goes around minus 6 mmHg. Therefore, this inspiration is referred to be as an active process. So to how much amount the air flows inside till it is equilibrated to 760 mm Hg. So we'll see what happens during expiration. So expiration, should remember, whenever there is quiet expiration, there are no muscles involved. It depends upon elasticity of the lungs. So now the lungs are expand. The property of the lungs is it comes back to its original position. So now the lungs are inflated, they are enlarged, they want to come to their original position. So when they are coming out to the original position, the airflow will occur from outside, inside to that of the outside. That is one. Number two, there are stretch receptors that are present in the lung, which will detect the stretching. So more it will, whenever the lungs are stretching, it is prevented by the stretch receptors at one point. Third, the VRG, the ventral respiratory group neurons from the medulla inhibits, or it is inhibited, or the action potential that is coming from there is inhibited. Whenever it is inhibited, there is no contraction of the diaphragm, instead they relax. External intercostal also relax. Whenever they are relaxed, what happens to the intrapulmonic pressure? It goes to +1 mmHg, and it is more, therefore the air flows out. Air flows out. However, if there is in need of forced expiration, it requires muscles, especially the abdominal muscles and also internal intercostal muscles. Therefore, this expiration is also referred to be as a passive process.